Scribblenauts is a silly puzzle game where you have to solve problems by using creativity, logic, and the sheer versatility of the English vocabulary. But today's plan is to beat Scribblenauts by only using the words that appear in the King James Bible. You see, in Scribblenauts, every puzzle has multiple working solutions. For example, this guy needs help with his date, and he asked me for a ride to impress his girlfriend. Usually you can solve it by spawning a tank, mech, or a chariot, but by limiting ourselves only to use the words from a religious text that was written around 2000 years ago, we're left with 1/3 and sometimes even 0/3 of the possible solutions, leading to such results as marrying a high school girl to a priest to fulfill her dreams, making the best pizza in the world out of a dough, cheese and a child, or preventing a volcano from erupting by sacrificing homeless. But since such power does not come for free, let's start at the beginning. The first level is just a tutorial that is supposed to teach us the basics of using our godlike powers by preparing this pig for a pig beauty contest. Because this is a tutorial for children and not grown men like me. Unfortunately, our freedom of options is extremely limited, but surprisingly the word sponge appears in the Bible, making our playthrough 100% Bible certified from the very beginning. The rest of the tutorial is very trivial. We make the pig giant, attach large wings, and surprisingly to no one it wins the first place. We also have to help it grow a sprout, which I attempt to do in the most slow accurate way by using wine. I mean, while there is wine in the Bible, unfortunately there is no wine in Scribblenauts, so I'm forced to use water. I will assume that by now all of us are on the same page, so I will skip the tutorial and cross-dissolve us into the city with real problems that will require real solutions. The first problem that I had to deal with was a bored boy whom I had to find a way to entertain. And to my surprise, besides wine and beer, there are not that many entertaining ways to spend your time in the Bible. So the only thing that came to my mind was the word frog, that is mostly mentioned in the context of plagues and deadly diseases. But since the frog is all it takes for this boy to be happy, we can confidently continue. My continuation takes me right into the hospital where things get serious, because now hundreds of people's lives depend on me. The first thing that I had to do was to give a surgeon something that she could use to perform a surgery, but since 2000 years ago doctors did not have much choice, giving her an axe just seemed like the only reasonable option. Overall the Bible was doing great in the hospital and I was killing it, until I had to find a way to cure these sick teeth. Now I'm not really sure if there were any dentists at the time the Bible was being actively written, or if they were even qualified, but I know one thing for sure, there is no dentist in the Bible. First I tried an adjective clean, which to no surprise made them clean but didn't address the core issue of them being sick. And after standing in the same place for 5 minutes and brainstorming all of the possible solutions in my head, the best thing that I could come up with was to spawn teeth and throw them at the sick teeth, which worked better than I'd ever expected. But the problems did not stop there. This doctor asked me to give him new equipment for the hospital, so I tried to give him every possible thing that could be considered new equipment. I even tried to make him rich so he could buy new equipment on his own. But unfortunately the Bible was not prepared to meet such an immovable object, so we have to skip this one. In the process of helping a stork I accidentally dropped a baby off the roof, but since this word appears in the Bible I did not do anything wrong. Outside I also had to help a superhero to create him a sidekick. Very quickly I exhausted all of the possible solutions, and I started to think that we would have to ignore this person in need. But that is until I spawned David from the David vs Goliath arc of the Bible. I thought David would look slightly different, keeping in mind he once shot at the Goliath with a rock. But what matters for us is the result, and it couldn't be any better. I help people at the museum, and then my curiosity leads me to a fire station, where I had to build a fire truck and then help it get out of the traffic. Since using wings would be way too obvious of a solution, I tried to manipulate another car in the traffic by making it stupid and burning, which led to me blowing up myself and going back to my original solution of using wings, but now in a humiliating way. Then I had to help a firefighter who couldn't sleep because of the snoring colleague, and since good sleep is very important naturally, I made him deaf so nothing could ever disturb him again. Things were not looking good when this girl asked me to calm her down. I tried to do the most obvious solution of spawning a giant, but unfortunately it just killed her. I tried to give her a bear, then make it small and dead in hopes that it would be enough to turn it into a teddy bear, but that didn't work either, so I had to leave her alone. Continuing my adventure I noticed a homeless man that was struggling with money, so I spawned a teacher, which in turn made him very rich and inadvertently changed his gender. I also met an old grandma who was tired of standing, and my moral compass just didn't allow me to ignore this issue, so I tried to make her running, flying and young. But sometimes the best solutions are not the ones that people need, and thankfully the chair appears in the Bible about 1 time, so we managed to solve it. And we make our way to Hyphen Heights, where a baseball player tricks me into making an old man blind, and where I have to fulfill an important request of helping a guy with his date. First we have to make him look good, which I managed to do by making him clean. Now we have to give him some sort of a vehicle that he would not be embarrassed to pick up his date with, and the chariot seems like a perfect fit, and for the gift I go with the classic Rose. For some reason she decides to steal his chariot and drive it herself, only for them to pretend like nothing even happened at the table. But now the stakes are higher, and we have to make this date even more romantic. As a lover boy myself, I know that women love rain, so I spawn a storm cloud right above her head, and just as I expected, she absolutely loved it. Because this date couldn't get any better. Now we had to find someone who could marry them, and there is no better fit for the job than David himself. After that I perform a series of simple tasks like giving a bullet boy an axe to fix all of his problems, marrying a high school girl to a priest, and making a yummy pizza by putting a child in an oven. Surprisingly, for the next couple of levels the Bible did not have any issues as long as we were being creative with our solutions. But that is until I got to the Zora's Park, but the real issues began. When I had to locate and capture a dinosaur, I needed to spawn something that would help a hunter to track him down, and usually the first thing that people think of is to use a magnifying glass. But unfortunately for us there's no magnifying in the Bible, and the word glass just spawns a glass that is completely useless. So the first reasonable solution was to spawn a pair of eyes, and when that didn't work I tried to make them big, which in theory would result in better vision, but that didn't work either. I tried to spawn a mirror, visitor, I even spawned David in order to try and steal his glasses, but apparently they were part of his body, so I couldn't. And just when I started to lose hope, the proverb 27:22 caught my attention. Though you grind a fool and a martyr with a pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. So I took a word martyr out of context, spawned it as a weapon, and it just worked. After that all I had to do was to spawn a cow to act as a bait, give this guy meat to distract the dinosaur, and then I had to find a way to knock him out. The first thing that came to my mind was to drop an anvil on his head, but the game was not prepared for such intellectual solutions, so I had to feed him a lamb, and we finished this quest. Going further, I helped a fisherman to catch a megalodon by sacrificing a random man, but something about that just didn't seem right, so to restore karmic balance, I resurrected that woman, and now it's even. On the same level, we also face an issue that the Bible can't solve. This man asked me to help him to take a picture with a local, and unfortunately for us there's no camera in the Bible. I tried to give him a tablet, but he doesn't know how to use it. So then I changed my strategy and gave him paper and a paint so that he would be able to take a picture the old way, but he just doesn't care. And neither do I, so I spawned a sword and killed this guy. Now we can just pretend that he was never there in the first place and that we didn't have to skip such a trivial situation. The next level takes place in a prison where we have to help various inmates with all types of issues ranging from escaping the prison to escaping the prison but more creatively. But the real issue I encountered on this level was when a guard told me that these watchtowers don't come with a bathroom. On its own it would be a very simple but important task to solve, but to my surprise the word toilet does not appear in the Bible even once, making this task impossible to complete. Or at least that's what I thought, because eventually I found out the bath in the Bible. For 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and a homer of seed shall yield 1 ephah. So I managed to fit it inside of the watchtower, and after giving the sniper some water, I successfully forced him to pee in a bathtub without being embarrassed by my presence. But meanwhile that was all fun and games. The real challenge came when I had to escape the prison myself. At first everything was going great. I put a box on the button, I made myself fast and small, utilized the storm to put down the fire, survived the deadly trap, got past the robot, grabbed the key, jumped over the spikes and brute forced myself below this door to get outside. And now I had to find a way to keep this button pressed permanently in order to climb on top. My first idea was to create a stack of boxes that would keep it pressed all the time, but thanks to physics it didn't go as planned. Then I tried to do the same with walls, but it didn't work either. I believe that failure is nothing else but a lesson, so I iterated on this idea and spawned a lamp that would act as a mechanism to hold the button down for longer. And even though I was very proud of such a solution, it still wasn't the right one. Before giving up, I remembered about Jacob's ladder that according to lore leads you to heaven, and feeling like it was my only shot at finishing this level, I couldn't help but to recreate this biblical moment myself. So I created a ladder and made it big, which then allowed me to perform a biblical miracle and make it to the other side. And the rest of the mission was a resounding success. Making my way out of the prison, I had to help a sad jockey to find a partner for a race, but when I spawned a virgin and he literally used her to race, I realized by partner he probably meant something else, and what followed next was a series of simple tasks that were fun to deal with, like giving a pirate woman poisoned garlic to cure her scurvy, or spawning a black hole for a scientist to observe that resulted in her unfortunate passing. Eventually, when I had to help Santa pack his Christmas gifts, I was greatly disappointed. Apparently, beautiful cheese does not count as a gift for nice kids, and neither does an evil burning cross count as a naughty gift for bad kids. At that point, I was not really sure what to think about all that, but I know that I would be grateful for either one. In the next level, I had to help 3 climbers reach the top of the mountain. The mission itself wasn't much of a challenge, but when I got to the end, I felt an extreme sense of responsibility. I had to choose a reward that would make the climb feel worth it. So I tried the obvious: money, big money, beautiful cheese, and a magic stone. But none of them worked. And after some time pondering, I figured that if it's not about materialistic things, then there is no better reward than fate. And that's why from this moment on, the top of this mountain will be occupied by a Jewish synagogue for everybody to see. There was also a guy who wanted to jump off the mountain but was way too afraid, so to solve his conundrum, I made him blind and brave, and it worked better than I'd ever thought. In order to help this woman to fix her throat, I gave her the most obvious cure, which is an evil honey. But that evil honey quickly got out of control and killed 2 innocent kids right in front of my eyes. Feeling responsible for their deaths, I had to stop the massacre myself. So I created the kind strong honey and watched how it restored peace with 1 punch. Then I had to solve a difficult riddle: what goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at midday, and 3 in the evening? For most people, this riddle is almost impossible to solve, but after some time thinking, I realized it couldn't be anything other than David himself. And just as I thought, that was the right answer. If you watched any of my previous videos, then you might know I'm a pretty humble person, but I can't deny that for the next couple of levels the Bible's vocabulary paired with my unmatched creativity were unstoppable. But when I got to the Volcano level, that's when I had an opportunity to truly make use of everything the Bible has to offer. First, I had to help a giant who needed something to play fetch with his dog. So without much thinking, I gave him a dead human, and his dog could not be any more happier. Then I had to help a hobbit by giving him something to throw into the volcano. And since I watched the movie, I knew the answer was a ring. But unfortunately it slipped out of his hands, and his own greed became his demise. After that, I had to prevent the volcano from erupting by giving it sacrifices. First, I had to give it 3 naturally occurring sacrifices: bread, a woman, and a homeless man. But the volcano was not satisfied. Then I had to sacrifice some sort of a technology, which was a wood, rock, and a word tablet taken out of context. Bind them on your fingers, write them on a tablet of your heart. Which in context is meant to say to remember and live by God's word. But in our case, we just turn the tablet into an iPad and throw it in the lava. And for the final task, a volcano god has asked me for a romantic partner, and of course there's no better fit than me. Then I turned this man into a strong green giant to help him impress ladies, give some kids on the beach poison to play volleyball with, and overall this level would be smooth, but for some reason when I spawned God to use a glider, he fell down, turned mad, and started killing all of the local bodybuilders for no apparent reason. And that got me thinking: has anything like this ever happened in the Bible? And meanwhile, I couldn't find anything that would resemble a specific situation. Turns out God showing off his wrath is a pretty common occurrence throughout the entire Bible. For example, this is how he threatens some of the miscreants: if you afflict them in any way, and they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will become hot, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. Needless to say, I let God do his thing without interrupting him. Eventually it turned out that one of the most glaring weaknesses of the Bible is the lack of guns, missiles, or any other kind of technology that would make it possible to solve some of the most difficult puzzles without much of the problem. For example, when I had to impress tourists underwater by creating a battle scene, I had no other choice but to disappoint them. Without missiles, nukes, or anything that could make a cool looking explosion, there simply wasn't much I could do. After that, things got only worse. I could not help a family of dolphins to find their mother because there's no dolphin in the Bible. I even tried David, but when that didn't work, I realized how difficult this puzzle really is. On a space station, I could not fix a jetpack because there is no gasoline nor battery in the Bible. And even though my ability to solve problems dramatically decreased by the end of the game, what mattered more is that I did not give up and still did everything that I could in order to help. When a scientist asked me to take him out of a cage that was guarded by a furious monkey, first I tried more of a bureaucratic approach. I tried to make it blind, I tried to give it money, food. I tried to give this monkey everything that I could, but everybody has their limits. And eventually I reached mine, which led to me spawning a soldier, stealing his gun, and unleashing my wrath in this monkey's face without feeling bad about it. Some girl also asked me to help her train, so the best I could offer was a stone, and a heavy stone, but since she was ungrateful, I decided to move on. On the moon I had to help soldiers to destroy black hole, and needless to say I tried my best. I spawned physician, which to my surprise appears in the Bible. Then I created the hairy giant stone, chariot, and for the last part of the mission I had to create something that would blow up the black hole. I did not want to go up that easily, so I tried to load God in the cannon, Martyr, Oil, Phoenix, and when this didn't work I put a Fiery Cow in the cannon and it blew everything up, but not in the way that I needed. Needless to say, I had to skip this one because unfortunately there are no weapons of mass destruction in the Bible, but now that I think about it, maybe there should have been.